Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
2024 was dominated by news of Las Vegas getting the nation's first high-speed rail and the Boring Company's Las Vegas Loop expanding. But what about our OG public transit, the Las Vegas Monorail? Doesn't it deserve love? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're revisiting a conversation that I had with writer Eric Duran-Valle. He shares history and insider tips that will make every Las Vegan think, is the monorail actually amazing? It's Monday, December 30th. I'm Sarah Lohman, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Hi, Eric. Welcome to CityCast Las Vegas.
Hey, Sarah. Great to be here again.
Okay, Eric, do you love the monorail?
I enjoy the monorail. I like my fair share of the monorail. It's fair to say. Yeah.
That was a very measured response as opposed to unbridled love. So tell us why you enjoy your fair share of the monorail.
Well, I think as someone who's grown up here my whole life and, someone who's consumed a lot of media and seeing how other cities work, wanting to see Vegas grow as a city, I've always been desiring more mobility options in Vegas and, more public transit. And the most apparent execution of that in Vegas has been the Las Vegas Monorail. When you drive down the Strip, it's hard to miss it. Even though it's not on the Strip, if you're driving on Koval or on Paradise, it goes right over your head.
Yeah.
It's very futuristic looking.
Slash nod to the 90s is also what it feels like, right?
It's what the 90s thought the future was going to be, I think. And so in the past few years, I've been trying to learn more about it and, seeing it as a viable alternate option for traversing the Strip. Now that I'm of age where, I'm going to the Strip and I drive, I now know that driving sucks.
Oh, it really
and
does.
Parking is even worse.
Yes.
And, for frame of reference, just the other night I was at Resorts World and their flat parking fee is $18.
I was at Resorts World last night. I even was just trying to force my Las Vegas ID somewhere at the machine. It didn't want it. Yeah.
No. And I've been feeling increasingly that some of the Strip parking garages aren't very locals friendly even anymore.
Totally.
Caesars to a degree, but in frame of reference though, if there is an attendant at a monorail station and you show your Vegas ID, you get a round trip ride for $2. So it's $1 per ride.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that's so an attendant actually needs to be there and it's got to be within business hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Okay.
But even if you have to use the machine after hours that they have there, it's $12 for a round trip, which is still less than parking at Resorts World or anywhere. I don't think anywhere on the Strip offers parking for $12.
So tell me a little bit about what it's like to ride the monorail.
Well, yeah, you're going to enjoy it. It's cool. It's a nice little cosplay of being in, a more cosmopolitan city.
I can pretend we have public transportation.
Exactly. That's how I felt, when I rode it at CES last year. So that's the first thing you notice apparently when you're in the monorail is that it's got these 90s print carpet seats and then, linoleum floor. And then on the overhead, there's some jazzy elevator music and a guy who's trying to continually pitch you the monorail while you were on the monorail. And it was congratulations, you're above the traffic. Saying stuff. It's guys, I'm already here. You already got my money. You don't have to keep selling it to me. I'm already here. But then, when you make that sharp turn and it has to stop, he turns very serious, the monorail has come to a stop. And I had to reassure the two tourists.
The danger.
Yeah. I had to reassure the two tourists in there with me, that's normal, guys. It's fine. It's going to start back up in a second. Yeah. But it's still fun, and like those quirks I think are very endearing. I've ridden metros and subways in a bunch of other cities, like in the metro in Barcelona, and I rode around the L in Chicago. And I've seen how like cities that are more reliant on those systems are built, and like how apparent they are in their communities and how connected they are. And I think that's something that's still to be desired and longed for on the monorail.
Yeah.
But, if your objective is that like you're going to the Strip and you want to save some headache, like I think the monorail's a pretty good choice. I tell people about it and they start doing it. Like, they tell me like, yeah, I went to see a Golden Knights game and we took the monorail. Or like, oh, we were having dinner at the Taco Bell Cantina, so we took the monorail. Because like my hack, I think I might have mentioned this before, Park at the Sahara, which is free. And then the Sahara has a monorail station built into it. It's like near where the Starbucks and the hotel check-in is. Like they really hide it away.
So I read your Desert Companion article, which I thought was really fascinating, beautifully written. You take the monorail stop by stop and sort of talk about both the history, the present, and maybe the future that never was. So you mentioned actually that the monorail was planned the same year as one of the most famous Simpsons episodes, I think.
Well, sir, there's nothing on earth like a genuine, bona fide, electrified six-car monorail. What I say?
Monorail.
What's it called?
Monorail.
That's right, monorail.
There was sort of a kind of wave of monorails happening in cities across the country all at the same time, with Las Vegas being one of them. And I think that's what The Simpsons was kind of poking fun at. The Disney parks had just gotten a big facelift. And so part of that was like a monorail. And then suddenly a lot of cities were trying to do something similar to those Disney monorails.
Yeah. The Simpsons monorail episode aired in 1993. And that's also the year the Las Vegas monorail was planned. So can you give us a little quick overview of the monorail's history?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I first want to give a shout out to two people who helped me a lot in writing that article, which was Taylor Lane and Rick Vallata over at the Review Journal. Rick Vallata was, just a real veteran traffic journalist for Las Vegas, and he had a lot of really great insight, But yeah, basically, in the 90s, it actually started as a way to connect the MGM and Bally's.
Okay.
You have to understand the climate in Vegas in the 90s was almost trying to emulate Disneyland to a degree, with like the Excalibur and going for the family-friendly thing.
That's absolutely what it feels like when I look at it. It reminds me of like a theme park from the 90s.
The company that made the monorail train is the same one, I think, who made it for Disney.
I mean, that was the vibe of the Strip in the 90s. Like, literally, they were stealing people from Disney.
Exactly.
Who worked from Disney to create our resorts at that time. Places like Excalibur and, all the cheesy ones. MGM.
Exactly.
The original version of MGM that was like Emerald Road related, Wizard of Oz related.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty popular when it first launched. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there were critics who ended up being vindicated by history about it. But the popularity of it and more the promise of it was really liked by investors and developers and the county. And so they agreed to expand it all the way down the Strip. And I think the original intent was to put it along the center of the Strip, which would make more sense.
Yes.
But there was a lot of opposition from casino operators who thought it would be noisy, it would take people away from their casinos. And of course, there was probably some opposition from, taxi cab companies as well.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop up to 45% off select styles, plus a free professional measure during the Blinds.com year-end blowout. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So, they built the monorail and it's behind schedule and over budget, and it's having a myriad of problems when it starts. I think within the first few months, parts of it were falling off.
I was gonna mention that. That actually really was a callback to like the New York City transportation system in the same time. Like pieces of bridges and infrastructure were just falling on pedestrians. But the monorail wasn't that bad, was it?
No, like, I mean, one was that I think, like, it collided with an electrical wire, which caused some arcing, but no one was hurt. The most probably serious thing that could have happened was a wheel fell off the monorail into a parking lot. And, you know, those wheels are big. So, yeah, but it's funny that, you know, saying that about New York is like, that's pretty old infrastructure.
Yes.
And this was something that was brand new that was having these problems. So, like, kind of from the beginning, there was this feeling that, you know, like, are these growing pains or is this forewarning of what's
poor planning? Yeah.
But, you know, it continues. And right around the Great Recession, you know, obviously every part of Vegas suffers, but the monorail especially because, you know, the liability companies that are involved with it and like the investors, you know, just are hemorrhaging money because no one's taking the monorail because no one's going to Vegas because no one has any money. It's 2008. And so it was pretty much about to go under. And so up to a few years ago, the Las Vegas Convention Visitors Authority bought the monorail because the main people who are riding it are convention goers.
Which is smart. I would.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And that's when it sees the highest ridership. You know, that's what Rick told me. And that's what the LVCVA told me when I reached out to them for comment. But coincidentally, the LVCVA, you know, is working a lot with the Hyperloop project, you know, the tunnels. And the main reason why there hasn't been much public transit development on Las Vegas Boulevard was because the monorail had a non-compete clause.
Oh.
Yeah. And so basically that just meant that there couldn't be any sort of big investment on building another streetcar or train or something like that because the non-compete was supposed to direct people to ride the monorail. But now that the LVCVA owns the monorail, that means that the Hyperloop project isn't going to have to worry about that non-compete clause.
So is there still a non-compete clause, or in this case it just doesn't matter because they're both owned by the same company?
I think that's pretty much what it is.
Okay.
I think it's that like even like they're not going to enforce it is what it is. Yeah. In regards to the future of the monorail, it's not the brightest because the trains are very old. And the company that makes the trains, Bombardier, does not exist anymore.
I know, they make all the trains, right?
Yeah, they don't exist anymore.
Where do trains come from now? Where do subway cars come from?
I don't know. Which is kind of a shame because, like, the track, you know, it's a lot of real estate. And, like, clearly a lot of work went into that. And so, like, I don't know if a company's just going to try to figure out how to make a train that can fit on those tracks, or if they're just going to cut their losses and say, let's put it in this Hyperloop instead.
Wow, I really didn't think that like the future of the monorail was so dependent on such a like tactile logistical factor in that there's nobody making monorail cars anymore.
Yeah.
Wow. So what have been some of the issues with the monorail?
Well, I think a lot of it just has to do with a lack of perceived value from riders, you know, like outside of the conventions. I think part of it is just the connotation of Vegas as a car town to begin with.
Yes.
That, you know, that's why before it used to be, you know, a big draw was that we had free parking. And that's not the case anymore.
Right.
People still think that way. You know, like you rent a Ferrari, drive it down the strip. I think just, the main issue is that, number one, people don't see it, you know, if you're on the main strip, like the main drag of the strip. So you don't think about it. And accessibility is also a main issue. Having ridden in a lot of, you know, actual metro systems, what I've observed that a good subway, train, or metro station does, it gets you in and out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's
like,
a good point.
It tells you, this is the street is this way, and, or it's like, this is the train is this way. So, like, there's a very good flow of people. When you are getting on and on board the monorail is such an endeavor to do because you have to find where it is in the casino, and then, you know, you have to traverse the station, and all the stations look very different from each other. They have the same signage and everything, and, you know, they have exorbitantly priced vending machines. But when you're having a casino act as a metro station, so to speak, casinos are designed to be labyrinthian. They're supposed to get you lost.
And they don't want their patrons being taken, in theory, to another casino.
Yeah. And so I think that just sort of simultaneous undercurrent of lack of support from casinos, along with open, opposition from taxi cab companies. And also remember that the Strip is the county, and once again, it's a matter of where city and county lines are drawn. And so if they wanted to connect it to downtown, they would have to, work with the city of Las Vegas. Right. And, given that they put a big sign up right by the Stratosphere, it's like, you are entering the city of Las Vegas now.
Yes.
Who knows how collaborative that pathway would be. But I think it's just overall a lack of motivation. I mean, it was built because Bob Broadbent, he was kind of the main drivers in getting it done and developed. But then, he passed away, and it was kind of like with, the Stratosphere, like Bob Stupak wanted it to be Vegas World, and then he died and said nah, that Vegas World thing is dumb, but this tower is cool.
Yeah. Or even downtown Fremont revitalization, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it sounds like the reasons that the monorail didn't really take off are sort of multitudinous, that it has to do with city and county being able to work together. It has to do with that monorail, you don't even really see it. So how are people really thinking about it? It feels like a secret when it should be public transportation. And it always is strange to me that the casinos thought about it as taking patrons away rather than bringing patrons to them. It works both ways, right?
Yeah.
But all those things together seem like a real mess.
Yeah, I think just accessibility and, visibility are the main issues.
Accessibility and visibility. So is the monorail a success where it is right now? Where it's at in life?
I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. So the main point that I reach at the end of that essay is that the worst thing about the monorail, isn't that it's a little shaky or that, it doesn't exactly get you where you want to go. It's just that it's a vision of what could be. Because we're always speculating, man, what if it went to the airport? Or what if it went by UNLV?
Yes.
Or what if it went downtown? It's just a constant sort of tantalization, tease of this is what we could have, but it's a bummer that we don't. But I recommend that every local ride it at least once to get an idea. And maybe that will fuel greater interest in transit in our city.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to pull out kind of on that one line that you wrote in your Desert Companion piece, which we will also link in the show notes. You wrote, when we lack proximity to another human being, our empathy for them evaporates. And I feel like that sentiment really resonated with me. Can you say a little bit more from your perspective on the role of public transportation and empathy?
I was just talking about this with someone last night. When you're in traffic and, the person in front of you is driving slow, it's not a person, it's a 2,000 hunk of metal that won't get out of your way.
Yeah.
And, so it's very easy to dehumanize other people, who have their own problems and story and just kind of view them as an obstacle. When you're in public transit, when you're sitting across from another human being, even if you're not talking to them, just seeing them and being in their presence gives you insight into someone else's life and, what they're going through. I started riding the bus to work for a minute when my car was out of commission. And it was a 6-minute drive, 20-minute bus ride.
Mm-hmm.
But it was early in the morning. And so I'm seeing people who are wearing their work uniforms, that I recognize as uniforms from property on the Strip. Or I would see kids, who were giddy, excited before school and everything. You would see people carrying their groceries, on their way home, or, maybe, a variety of people. And I think that's the really big value of public transit, is that just that exposure to other people and recognizing your place in a community. That it's not something that should make you feel small. It should make you feel connected. It should make you feel like you're not alone. That's why I think it's so important. I think that's why maybe sometimes people have trouble finding friends here because they feel like that isolation, the isolation of the car, and then of your home, and then like of a cubicle at your job. It makes you feel very disconnected from someone. Whereas if you're in these kind of quote unquote third places, whether it's a stationary place like a coffee shop or a public transit option, you gain greater empathy for other people.
I think that's so beautiful, Eric. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We'll link to Eric's lovely monorail piece, Rail to Nowhere, in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed this show, why not tell a friend? Tell them about the monorail. Blurt some facts. You can also rate our show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Hey, Las Vegas. We'll be back January 2nd with a new episode to kick off 2025. Until then, monorail, 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 monorail,
Monorail.
Yeah, my favorite public transportation moments are always when there's something else really crazy going on and you lock eyes with a stranger across from you. I didn't want to add that in.
Yeah, you're having that sort of like, we're stuck in this together.
Like
we're going to figure this out.
It was too beautiful for me to make a joke at the end, but it's so true. It's such a privilege to like connect to a stranger with like, did you see that? Is that happening?